I have the great pleasure of welcoming someone all the way from New York City. He has actually traveled sharing his book and his film all the way from Iceland to China. So we are one of maybe 60-some cities now that he has ventured to talk about this really incredible work that he has done. He is also the author of coffee table photography book, A Better Life, 100 Atheists Speak Out on Joy and Meaning in a World Without God. And as you well should be aware, we are doing a film screening of his documentary, A Better Life, an exploration of joy and meaning in a world without God. That is later on this evening, 2 screenings, so much at 2, 4:30, and 7. Let's give a really great warm welcome to Chris Johnson.
All right. Well, I have to say, I live in New York, and I am overwhelmed by the size of the crowd here, which is saying something. I'm so impressed. I can't keep talking about how impressed I am with Kansas City. You guys rock. Awesome. So, just a couple things before I get started. This tour that I'm on is brought to you in part by Patreon. So if you want to help support the work I'm doing, the tour I'm doing, the screening tour, you can visit patreon.com/theatheistbook for more information about that. Another way you can help support the work I'm doing is come to the screening. We have 2 screenings today, as Helen mentioned, one at 4:30 and one at 7. We have a very limited number of tickets available. It's an intimate screening. So you can get your tickets if you go to theatheistbook.com/KC. You can buy your tickets today, right now, on your phone. Well, after I'm done speaking. So I'm here to talk about the project I did, the photography book, as well as the film. And I want to start off by showing a clip from one of my favorite films, which might seem a little weird for an atheist, but it's a film about C.S. Lewis. Has anyone seen the film Shadowlands before? Shadowlands, awesome. It's about C.S. Lewis, and Anthony Hopkins plays C.S. Lewis. And in this clip, he's talking about the problem of evil, why God would... Oh, there it is.
Where was God on that December night? Why didn't he stop it? Isn't God supposed to be good? Isn't he supposed to love us? And does God want us to suffer? What if the answer to that question is yes? So I'm not sure that God particularly wants us to be happy. I think he wants us to be able to love and be loved.
So God wants us to be able to love and be loved. And I happen to agree with 1/3 of that statement. If people were to ask me what are the themes of the work that I've done, it is love and be loved. One of the problems we're facing in the world today is how people view atheists. Atheists are one of the most distrusted groups in the country, in the world. People think you can't be a good person without God, right? And even sometimes what atheists put out as the face of atheism doesn't help. So if I were a religious person and I was thinking, what is this atheism thing all about? Who are these atheists? Why don't I go to an atheist Facebook page? Why don't I have a look? What would you find there? Maybe something like this? Religion, a tool invented by the powerful to control the stupid. I'm an atheist, and I really don't care what you think. By the way, this is just about the content. The graphic design issue is my other lecture. No, I'm not religious, and I find it deeply insulting that you would presume that someone as smart as me shares your narrow delusional worldview. Or what about this one, which you can get on a t-shirt? Science flies you to the moon, religion flies you into buildings. This is what people think of when they think of atheists and atheism. I want to change that. It's a little hard to see This is a photograph from my book. This is author and blogger Greta Christina and her wife Ingrid in San Francisco. Behind them is the Great Wall of China. I love that joke. It's my favorite joke. You can go home now. If you read Greta's piece in the book, this photograph is even more poignant. I recorded a podcast yesterday with Greta, which also is available on my website if you want to listen to that. And she tells the story behind that photograph, which is really a fascinating story. I won't go into it now, but check it out. Rock climber Alex Honnold in Yosemite, or Tracy Harris in Austin, Pat Churchland in San Diego, or Julia Sweeney and her daughter in Chicago. This is what I want the face of atheism to be. So how did I begin? How did I start this project? How did I go from being a poor, struggling artist in New York to being the poor, struggling artist standing in front of you? It started here at White Sands National Monument in New Mexico. How many people have been to White Sands before? Awesome. The front, apparently. Everybody in the front. And in the back, very back, yes. If you haven't been to White Sands, try to go at some point. It's amazing. It's incredible. I love New Mexico. It's a really incredible place. It looks like snow. I was there on a road trip about 4 years ago with my brother. I was taking tons of photos, as you do. I was a freelance photographer. And my brother turned to me and he said, you know what you should do? You should make a photography book. And I said, why would I do that? Nobody knows who I am. Nobody cares. There's so many photography books out there. There's so many photographers. What a silly idea. And he said, well, you just have to think of a way of making it different. And we were listening to a lot of podcasts on our road trip about atheism and religion, science, and being in this amazing place, this place that people often associate with the work of God. I thought, what if somebody made a book of atheists, about atheism? But instead of, these are the arguments why religion is bad, or this is why religion is wrong. What if it was pictures of happy, smiling people? Right? And of course, by somebody I meant, why don't I do that? But I had a problem. I didn't have any money. Remember the poor, struggling artist part? And doing a project like this was going to be very expensive. Traveling around, taking photos, printing a book like this. I'd never done a book before. No publisher was going to be interested in me, right? And then I found Kickstarter. How many people have backed a project on Kickstarter before? Awesome. How many people backed my project on Kickstarter? Oh, somebody in the back. All right. Thank you. The rest of you, by the way. So if you don't know about Kickstarter, it's a crowdfunding platform. So you can say, hey, I want to do a book, I want to do a movie, I want to do a play. And people can give you money to do that. And they get a reward in return. Like if you give $50, you get a copy of the book when it's done. So it's basically like pre-ordering something to foster its creation, basically. So I thought, this is how I'm going to make this happen. This is how I'm going to make this project a reality. And so I decided to put myself out there on the internet and say, I want to do this project. And of course, the internet being the internet responded in the best way possible. If you can't read that, it says, please die in a car crash or other accident. Now, I love this comment for two reasons. One, they said please. And two, they give me a choice. They're okay if I die in a car crash or some other means. So, oh, the internet, isn't that great? I started to get other emails, though, and other reactions to this project that I put out there that I wanted to do. This gentleman wrote to me, and he said, I'm a 60-year-old still in the closet atheist. I have to be due to my very conservative, narrow-minded Western Pennsylvania surroundings. Life makes more sense now. I can live for now, not worry, so I don't burn for eternity. Losing my religion has been such a refreshing change. I was never raised religious, so getting emails like this, I thought, wow, this is really important. People are getting something out of this. People see a need for a positive spin on not believing in God, right? By the way, he finished his email by saying, "I'm anxious for your book to be published, though I'll have to hide it under my bed so my wife doesn't find it." Finally, after 30 years, my work has something in common with pornography. It's pretty incredible. Other emails I got, a U.S. serviceman in Iraq sent me an email with a photo of him saying, "I'm an atheist." Atheists in the foxholes, they do exist. It's another misconception that people have. Yes, absolutely. So I did a 2-month-long fundraiser for the book. This is a graph of that. The green line is the goal. If you know about Kickstarter, if you don't reach the goal, you don't get any money. So you have to reach your goal. So 2 months there was a lot of pulling my hair out trying to get this thing funded. Please fund my project. Finally, April 8th, it succeeded and became the second highest grossing publishing project Kickstarter had ever done. All for a book about atheists. Awesome. Thank you. By the way, April 8th is my birthday, and it was my 30th birthday, so there must be a God. So I scrapped the whole project. So I was off traveling around the world, meeting atheists from different walks of life, doing some incredible things along the way, and meeting people. It's my favorite. I showed that slide in both Cleveland and Detroit. I don't know who was offended more. Some folks you might recognize, I interviewed Donald Johanson up there, who discovered Lucy back in the 1970s, Nala Mahmood from Sudan, Carol Blue, the widow of Christopher Hitchens, and this guy. So it took about a year and a half, and I came out with the photography book, A Better Life, 100 Atheists Speak Out on Join Meeting in a World Without God, available on theatheistbook.com and Amazon, if you're interested. We had a great launch party in New York. The gentleman on the far right there is Matthew Chapman, who's Charles Darwin's great-great-grandson. He's in the book as well. So when I interviewed everybody for the book, I filmed the interviews. So I had 70, 80 hours of interview footage. And I thought, what am I going to do with all this once the book is done? Turn it into a movie. So I spent 9 months editing the film, which we're going to be screening tonight. 2 screenings. First time I've done 2 screenings in one day, by the way. That's pretty cool. Kansas City, you're full of firsts. And I thought to myself, okay, so I'll do a couple of screenings. I'll do 7, London, New York, LA, San Francisco, Seattle, right? Like Helen was saying earlier, this is, I'm in the 60s, 70s. This is like 68, 69, something like that in terms of the screenings. It's just taken off. We had a premiere in London, all over the world. It's just really taken off to become a huge, huge thing. All these cities, all the way from New York to Reykjavik to the island of Bornholm in the middle of the Baltic Sea. I didn't even know that existed until I did this project. From the South American premiere in Lima, Peru, one of the gentlemen who organized that event was telling me that folks had traveled 8 hours on a bus to come see the movie in Lima. Anybody ever taken a bus for 8 hours in Peru? Right. Oh, somebody has. All right. So if you don't show up tonight, you have no excuse. And also went to Shanghai as well to show the film last year. I just want to briefly introduce you to a few people that I met along the way doing this project, talking about these important issues, these positive issues, these life-changing issues. One of the folks I want to introduce you to is Pat Churchland. Anybody know of Pat Churchland's work? Neurophilosopher from San Diego. This will be very relevant to why we're gathered here today. This is Pat Churchland talking about celebrating from a secular perspective.
I used, of course, to teach introductory philosophy to undergraduates, both at UC San Diego, but also in Manitoba. And often, of course, the issue of religion very naturally would come up. And in the kind of social times, and I'd go for coffee with the students and things afterwards, they'd say, well, but, what do you do about Christmas? It was a very reasonable question. And so I sort of began to explain to them, well, you know, we really think of it as a kind of, originally, a kind of pagan holiday, which is sort of the celebration of winter solstice, where, you know, the days are as short as they're going to get, and the photo period is going to lengthen, and there's all kinds of rituals associated with it being winter solstice. And we just partake of any rituals that happen to please us and that we feel comfortable with. Do the kids hang up stockings? Of course. And so do the dogs. And do we leave out cookies for Santa Claus? Well, but of course. And so it doesn't have to be taken to be too heavy and serious, and it can still be fun and playful and joyful, while at the same time, you know, you're not buying into it wholeheartedly. I mean, in the way that, you know, when you play Monopoly, you take it all very seriously, and you really want all those houses, and then you really want to get those hotels, and you really want to be the monopolist that wins it all and all that sort of stuff. But you know, it's only play money. Well, in something like that, I think that you can partake of various religious rituals without believing in the metaphysics or the mysticism or the stuff that goes on behind it all.
Someone else I met on my journey is A.C. Grayling. Anyone read A.C. Grayling before? If you haven't, he's amazing. He's also the kind of person who could read the phone book and it would be interesting. It's kind of a dated reference now, isn't it? Phone books. All the kids are like, what's a phone book? Right? And a dial tone. What's a dial tone? Right? I'm dating myself now. One of the things I talked with A.C. Grayling about was making the most of the time we have and how much time we really have together. That's one of the things that drives me, is knowing that we only have a very limited amount of time. And he put it in a very interesting way, which I want to share with you.
If you think that death is the end of one's life, it puts a great deal of emphasis and focus on achieving something in this life. Now, I'm very fond of repeating, and I repeated at every possible opportunity, what Solon, the Athenian lawgiver, said to King Croesus. He said to him, you've got to remember that a human life is less than 1,000 months long. If you do the maths, supposing you live until you're 80, what's 12 times 80? It's less than 1,000 months. And a third of them, 300 months, you're asleep. Another third of them, you're waiting in line somewhere, in Duane Reade or, you know, somewhere. So you have about 300 months to live with passion, to live with vividness, to live trying to do something, make something, trying to create some significance in your own life, in the lives of people you care about, and indeed in the world in general, if you can. And that's quite a, that's quite a challenge in a way, but it's a good challenge. And so it means that one must not waste time. As the cobblers used to say, work while you have light. So while you're here, while you have your 300 months, you must put all your energy into it.
300 months. And that's best case scenario, right? Best case scenario, 300 months. We really have to treasure the time we have together. The last clip I want to show you is of Julia Sweeney. I'm sure people know of Julia Sweeney. I don't need to ask. And in my clip here, she's going to talk about death and how we see our own mortality.
Well, that's interesting, because I've had a lot of death around me. First of all, I've somehow had a lot of death around me just by accident. Like I've just worked with a lot of people who died. I've had a lot of friends who've died. And I've had family members who died. My brother died of cancer, and that was when I was sort of a believer, like kind of a vague believer. I wasn't clearly an atheist then. But this summer, my other brother died, and my husband's dad died, and so I'm just like really around a lot of people dying right now. And I guess it makes, like, you really do see everything differently. I notice, for example, people coming up saying, I'm praying for you and I'm praying for your brother. And I realize they're really just saying, I'm thinking of you and I'm thinking of your brother. But I know, like, just having gone, my brother died like a month and a half ago, and people, they seem to want to, like they would go to church and say a prayer for my brother, but not necessarily go do something for him before he died. So for me, I understand that if what helps you think about somebody who's about to die is to go into a church and just meditate on that person for yourself, that makes a lot of sense. But it doesn't make a lot of sense to the person who's dying. Really, you need to be with the person who's dying. So that changed my attitude about being around people who are dying. I really think of people like flowers in a big field of wildflowers, and they bloom and then they die. And so just that view of people makes it really poignant for me. It's actually much more profound death to me than it was before. If you really think somebody's going to die and then go off somewhere else, that's a very different point of view than if you think the universe produced this person who lived for this many years and had this many experiences, and now they're going away, and the universe is continuing on. I mean, that's just a very different view of it. And to me, it makes it very poignant and very meaningful and really emotional.
I love what she says about people being like flowers in a field. And it really changed the way I think about my own life, how I think about the lives of everyone I know. And it brings me back to that quote, or that 1/3 of the quote from Shadowlands, love and be loved. Because that's all you have, and we only have 300 best case scenario, so let's make the most of it. I hope you enjoyed my talk, and I hope you come to the screenings tonight at 4:30 and 7. And I think I have some time for questions, if people have any questions.
Mind just wait for me to blow the speakers. Wait for me to come to the microphone. Wait for me to come to you with the microphone, and just please ask a question. So instead of a statement. So does anyone?
An easy question,
Oh, okay.
not a hard question. Oh, there's
Okay, we'll start here.
Some of the members of our group have been asked by churches to tell them what it means to be an atheist. Have any churches approached you about showing your film?
I've done some screenings at Unitarian Universalist churches. Those are really the only ones, though. Most mainstream churches don't really call me up. I don't know why. I'd like to do more, though. And in fact, when religious people have come to see the film, they've really enjoyed it. I had a pastor come to a screening in Phoenix who stood up during the Q&A and said, I didn't really know what this is about before I came to see it, but I'm your #1 fan. And he's a Christian pastor, and he loved it because he was so relieved to see a project about atheism which wasn't telling him that he's stupid and he's wrong and the harm that he's doing, but a positive viewpoint. And he loved it. So hopefully I can get more. That's one of the reasons I have the Patreon set up, is try to get more screenings set up and do churches as well, because I think churches wouldn't necessarily pay to do screenings, but if it was already pre-funded, they probably would be more inclined to do one. Yeah, absolutely.
How much does it cost to do a book like this?
The Kickstarter the goal was $95,000, and I raised $103,000, and it was pretty much on budget. So it costs a lot of money to do a project like this. The film was another $23,000. So.
How did you pick people? How did you find people? I mean, the big people make sense, but...
I only picked people that I liked. Right, so some of the people I already knew of their works, had read their works before. Other people I knew in real life or were recommended by other people. Someone will say, oh, do you know this person? And they'd be really good, and so they recommend somebody. Or like the airline pilot who's in the book, he's just a friend in New York. Art historian at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, she's a friend. Just people that I know. So it was a combination of folks I already knew and kind of recommendations. So.
Hi.
Hi.
Since this project's been so successful, do you have any ideas on any continuation or any similar projects?
What was the last part of that?
Any new projects, any similar projects?
Okay, well, I'm not sure yet about what I'm doing after the tour ends. The tour is going to end probably at the end of this year, so December, January, somewhere around there. I keep getting more bookings, which is good. But I don't know what I'm going to do after that. This is going to be a hard one to top because, just doing something I wasn't really invested in would be difficult at this point because I really love the work I'm doing. And it's so rewarding. But we'll see. I'll let you guys know. You can sign up for my mailing list on my website, and I'll certainly let everyone know.
Following the screening tour, do you plan to have a digital download or a DVD version of the film available?
It's almost like I planted you in the audience. But we've never met. I have no idea who this guy is. Actually, I do. It is available on the website right now as a rental, as a download, as a DVD. So you can get it there now. But I would encourage you to come to the screening tonight if you can, because a live screening is always better. Plus, I'm going to be there, and you can ask me questions again. It'll be a lot of fun.
Okay.
Oh, you're back there in the back.
I just thought I'd ask, as a photographer, what do you feel makes for a compelling photograph?
What makes for a compelling photograph? That's a really good question. I think the subject has a lot to do with it, and a subject that's comfortable. I mean, I think many people who aren't used to having their picture taken get very stiff when their photo's taken. They put a very fake smile on. But if you learn to relax when you're having your photo taken, the photos turn out much better. So that's what I would say. Having subjects who are relaxed, I think, makes a really compelling photograph because it just appears to be more natural.
I noticed that you interviewed Dawkins.
Yep.
And I've had my problems with Dawkins because of the fact that people identify, oh, that's the voice of science. Mm-hmm. It's somebody who tells us we're stupid. Mm-hmm. I'm interested in what your interchange was with Dawkins and whether he saw kind of the damage that he does with that kind of talk and whether he cares.
I don't know if he saw that. I think that we had a good conversation, but I feel that he is kind of so ingrained in the way he's always talked about these things that talking about them in a new way wasn't particularly, I don't know, it didn't seem, how do I explain it? I mean, he was nice, but he just is who he is, and I don't think he really changed the way he saw things based on my conversation. I'm not too persuasive for people, apparently, so maybe next time. But yeah, that's a good question.
We'll do two more here. So.
I noticed on the list a number of the places where you went. Were there any places you did not go because of intolerance, and people were not open to your ideas?
No, I would go anywhere to do screenings. Maybe not anywhere. Would I go to Iraq? I don't know. Libya? But no, there's no place that I've avoided because of any kind of issue. And I really do think that people are a lot more open to something like this than they would be a more combative project. And it's hard even in my own kind of atheist secular community to get marketing and publicity about it because it's a positive project. What do people like in the atheist world? The stuff I showed you at the beginning. They love the combative stuff. They love look at all these stupid people over here. So a positive project's harder to sell even within my own community. So, if somebody were to protest it, that would actually be good publicity. But nobody does. So, yeah, I'm stuck. I'm too nice, right? Oh, yeah.
So it sounds like you're saying there is a place for the combativeness of someone like Richard Dawkins, a slightly brusque approach. But what about the edgy one-liners like science flies us to the moon, religion flies us into buildings? Is there a place for that within healthy atheist communities? Or, I know it's bad for PR, is that just something that you think that we shouldn't really accept in our communities?
I think it depends on how combative and how divisive the statements are. I think that statement in particular, the reason I put that up there is because I think it is overly simplistic and it doesn't really give you anything new. Because you could then just say, well, science also makes atomic weapons, right? So, I don't see it as being useful to the conversation. If something, I think satire, calling people out can be very useful and helpful, especially in areas where, oh no, that was God. Especially where, religious ideologies are causing harm. That's really important to stand up and say, we're not going to accept this. But I think it's also useful and important to try to understand where people are coming from and not demonize the other side completely, because I don't think it's a black and white issue.
All right. Well, another round of applause for Chris Johnson.
Thank you.